So our message to these foreign terrorist organizations is we will treat you like we have treated Al-Qaeda. We will find you, we will map your networks, we will hunt you down, and we will kill you.
President Trump has told reporters that he delayed US military strikes against Islamic State militants in Nigeria until yesterday because he wanted them to be what he called a Christmas present.
The United States launched strikes in Nigeria on Christmas Day, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has made it clear there's more coming. Multiple Republican lawmakers are publicly backing it, and Nigeria said they're open to continued operations. This isn't speculation or posturing. Trump, Hegseth, and members of Congress are all saying the same thing on record. More strikes are planned, Nigeria has given permission, and the infrastructure to make it happen is already in place. On December 25, 2025, US forces hit 2 ISIS camps in Sokoto State, northwest Nigeria, using 16 GPS-guided munitions launched from MQ-9 Reaper drones. The operation lasted about an hour and 20 minutes, and Nigerian officials said the targets were being used to plan large-scale attacks. AFRICOM initial assessment reported that multiple militants were killed. Trump announced it on Truth Social, saying he'd warned terrorists there would be hell to pay if they kept killing Christians. He said the Department of War executed perfect strikes, then added something that matters most. He stated there would be many more dead terrorists if the slaughter continues. Pete Hegseth posted immediately after, saying the president was clear last month that the killing of innocent Christians must end, and that ISIS found out on Christmas.
If the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about.
Then he added 2 words that revealed the administration's plans. More to come. That's not a vague threat or political rhetoric. That's stated policy, and Republican lawmakers jumped in to support it within hours. Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas posted on X shortly after the strikes, saying, "I commend President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and our brave troops for these strikes against bloodthirsty ISIS savages who are not only persecuting Christians, but also have killed many Americans." Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska, a retired Air Force Brigadier General, said the military action was right and that intervening saves innocent lives. He called it genocide against Christians in Nigeria and the nearby area. Senator Ted Budd from North Carolina called the strikes decisive and said they will save lives and protect religious freedom. The House Foreign Affairs Committee released a joint statement declaring under President Trump, ISIS is now the hunted. America stands firmly with our partners in eliminating the terrorists who have targeted innocent Christians for extermination. House Appropriations Chairman Tom Cole from Oklahoma led a group statement with other appropriators that went even further. Nigeria is the most dangerous place on earth to follow Christ, and faith and humanity must be protected. Islamic terrorists will not overrule national security, religious freedom, and the right to worship. We were on the ground. We heard and saw firsthand of the failures to stop extremism and systemic violence against innocent people. These strikes send a clear and unmistakable message. America will stand with persecuted believers, confront evil, and hold terrorists accountable. That last statement reveals something critical. Cole led a congressional delegation to Nigeria the weekend before Christmas, where they met with federal and local officials. Representative Bill Huizenga, who was part of the delegation, said they got insight that some attitudes inside the Nigerian government are beginning to turn in favor of protecting Christians. So this wasn't Trump acting unilaterally or impulsively. Members of Congress traveled to Nigeria, assessed the situation on the ground, met with officials, came back to Washington, and days later the strikes happened with their full support and public endorsement. Nigeria's response confirms this was coordinated from the start. On December 26th, Bloomberg reported that Nigerian officials suggested they'd be open to continued intervention. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement acknowledging the strikes and saying Nigerian authorities remain engaged in structured security cooperation with international partners, including the United States, in addressing the persistent threat of terrorism and violent extremism. That's not pushback or diplomatic protest. That's permission to continue. Nigeria's Information Minister Mohammed Idris went even further, confirming the strikes were carried out in coordination with Nigerian authorities and that they targeted 2 major ISIS enclaves, He said the operation was based on credible intelligence and careful operational planning to minimize collateral damage, and he called the targets successfully neutralized. Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuggar spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio twice in the days before the strikes.
It has nothing to do with a particular religion. It is, as far as we're concerned, targeting terrorists that have been attacking Nigerians, period. So it has nothing to do with one religion or another.
And President Bola Tinubu gave approval for the operation. This wasn't a case of the US acting and Nigeria reacting. It was planned, coordinated, and executed jointly. Here's why more strikes are coming and why both governments want them. The US has been conducting intelligence-gathering flights over large parts of Nigeria since late November, according to Reuters reporting on December 23rd, 2 days before the Christmas strikes. Those flights weren't random surveillance. They were mapping targets, building operational plans, and preparing for sustained operations over time. AFRICOM has the infrastructure to sustain this without permanent bases inside Nigeria. MQ-9 Reaper drones can operate from naval vessels offshore, which means they don't need ground installations or large troop deployments. They just need coordination with Nigerian authorities, and Nigeria is providing that willingly. Trump's framing of the strikes matters here because it has strong domestic political support. He's positioned this as protecting Christians from ISIS, and that narrative resonates with evangelical voters who care deeply about Christian persecution abroad. Trump has been hammering this issue for months, and it's part of a broader strategy. In late October, Trump started warning that Christianity faces an existential threat in Nigeria. He threatened military intervention over what he said was Nigeria's failure to stop violence targeting Christian communities. In November, the Trump administration rolled out a new visa restriction policy targeting individuals accused of orchestrating religious violence against Christians in Nigeria. The policy restricts visas for those involved in anti-Christian violence, and it's part of building justification for military action. Nigeria's government has pushed back on the Christian persecution narrative, saying repeatedly that armed groups target both Muslims and Christians. They've argued that the violence isn't religiously motivated in the way Trump describes it, but instead represents a complex mix of terrorism, banditry, farmer-herder conflicts, resource scarcity, and governance failure, all overlapping. But here's the key difference. Nigeria disputes the framing, but they're not disputing the strikes themselves. They'll argue about whether it's genocide or terrorism, but they're accepting the firepower because they need it. Nigeria's military is overstretched and deployed in 2/3 of the country's states. They're fighting multiple insurgencies simultaneously. Boko Haram operates in the northeast, ISWAP controls territory in Borno State, Lakurawa emerged in the northwest with sophisticated equipment, and armed bandits are kidnapping across the Middle Belt. Nigeria's Defense Minister Christopher Musa said in November that military intervention against Islamists will only solve 30% of the conflict. He said the remaining 70% has to be resolved through good governance, because the Nigerian government has little authority over rural villages in the north. But 30% is still something significant. And if American drones can provide that 30% without deploying Nigerian troops on the ground, the government will take it. The problem is what happens after the strikes end. Judd Devermont, former U.S. National Security Advisor for African Affairs under Biden, criticized the Trump administration's approach in November. He said instability in Nigeria won't be reversed overnight by an influx of U.S. resources, and that strikes don't address root causes. He argued that governance, not firepower, is what's needed for long-term stability. He's right about the underlying problems, but the Trump administration isn't trying to fix Nigeria's governance structures. They're trying to demonstrate American capability, show that Washington still has reach in a country where Russia and China are expanding influence, remind African governments that U.S. military power is unmatched, and deliver a political win to evangelical voters who care about protecting Christians abroad. The timing supports this strategic reading. Nigeria signed a military partnership with China in January 2025 that included technology transfer, local arms production, and manufacturing plants for ammunition, tanks, and advanced equipment built inside Nigeria by Chinese contractors. Russia has been training Nigerian officers in Moscow, with over 200 graduates from Russian defense universities and scholarship quotas increased from 90 to 150 in 2025. When the US launched strikes in December, it wasn't just about ISIS camps in Sokoto. It was about positioning and signaling that America still matters in Nigeria even as other powers gain ground. The "more to come" statement from Hegseth reinforces that message because one operation is a response, but multiple operations represent a strategy. Nigeria is open to more strikes because they need the help their military can't provide. They can't cover the territory, can't track all the groups, and can't respond fast enough. American drones provide intelligence, surveillance, and precision strike capability Nigeria doesn't have domestically. And accepting American help doesn't mean rejecting Chinese infrastructure or Russian training. Nigeria is hedging by playing powers against each other and taking from all three without committing exclusively to any. That's the new game in Africa, and the US is learning how to play it. If you can't compete on infrastructure, compete on firepower. If you can't match Chinese investment, offer precision strikes. If you can't train officers like Russia does, provide drone support that wins battles. The next strikes will happen when AFRICOM identifies targets through continued intelligence-gathering flights. It could be weeks or months, but Hegseth already told you it's coming, and Nigeria already said they're open to it. The only unknowns are when and where, but the infrastructure is in place. The coordination is established, and the political justification has been built. This is what sustained military engagement looks like in 2025. No invasions or occupations, just drones offshore, intelligence flights, coordination with local governments, and strikes when targets present themselves. It's cheaper than permanent bases, more flexible than troop deployments, and politically easier to justify because it's framed as a counter-terrorism partnership rather than intervention. Trump delayed the first strikes by a day so they'd land on Christmas and told Politico he wanted to give terrorists a Christmas present. The theatrics matter to him because striking